Jeremy.
Carrie.
Enough faff.
Yeah.
We've been waiting the exact amount of time that we would have waited even if we had recorded last week, because I couldn't talk about it last week. But God of War Ragnarok is out. It has been out for about 5 days.
You can play you can play it.
You can play it. I don't need you to play it, but we are going to talk about it. Jeremy and I were discussing before the show how much we're going to discuss about the game. For context, I have played the game and completed it. I received it early for work. Jeremy got it on launch and you're about 8 hours through, I would say.
I don't know. I've been playing it in weird amounts. My time tracking for it is all gone.
Yeah, you're at the point I was at around 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were saying you're rough, a third-ish, a quarter-ish, a third-ish, maybe a bit more-ish through the game, somewhere around there.
A bit more-ish. Yeah, like I think honestly, with the amount of stuff that I do in these games, probably safely a third. I'm not a big go around and do a lot of the side stuff. That's my feeling.
Fair enough.
Based on just looking at like my barometer for how far I am through a game that I haven't played, because how can you know? Is I look at like contents for walkthroughs. Like I will go to like a text walkthrough and I will look at the contents page.
And so, see how far through you are in comparison to that makes sense.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, we are probably going to talk more about the opening hours of the game than you would have seen any of the review coverage that came out a week before release.
Kinda
we're going to talk about
as in the review coverage. We could talk about some stuff after as well, but we're gonna talk about a few of the moments that happened at the start of the game that I don't think you would have seen in those original reviews, certain boss fights that you get at the start of the game and revelations about characters and other characters that you meet and stuff like that. So if you don't want anything like that, if you're really looking forward to the game but you don't have your hands on it yet for whatever reason, maybe jump over this topic and come back to it another time once you've played the first 8 or 10 hours. Because we are going to go into that stuff. If you don't mind if you don't mind knowing some things before you go into it, and knowing we're only going to be talking about the first third of the game, because I'm not going to spoil anything for Jeremy or for the rest of you in terms of the rest of the game. Then feel free to stick around, or if you've played it, or if you don't care, hang around. It's going to be a good discussion. But that's all of the context for all of you going into this. Jeremy, we were talking before the show, and you said, do you know where I've landed on this? And I said, considering where you are in the game and how much more you have left to go, no, I don't know what you've landed on this. I think I know where you'll land by the end of the game. But at this point in the game... Where's that?
I think you're going to land in a similar place to the original game.
Interesting.
And I partially say that because that's basically where I've landed on my overall appraisal of the game, where I think there was something in one of our discussions about the original 2018 release. When we finished it, I think we said, you and I were having a discussion at some point, I can't remember if it was on air or not, but we said it's a well-told story, but it might not be the best story.
Sure.
And I feel like there's definitely a parallel to be had here with this game in that regard. I think it's very well told. I think it's very compelling, very well acted. It's gorgeous. I think the soundtrack is incredible. I think some of the plot details, they don't do it for me, and I'll leave it at that for this discussion. But
sure,
that's where I land on this game. Jeremy, where are you on this game? How do you feel about it after you've had a really good chunk of time with it?
Yeah,
what's the vibe?
I think this is a better story told worse.
A better story told worse. Okay.
Yeah. So just for brief context, I think overall, for the most part, I look at God of War in the 2018 one in the same way that I look at a lot of AAA games, which is
in this weird window of it's almost too big to fail just because of the amount of bodies and hours and money that has been thrown at this product. It kind of can't come out bad unless you've got like a cyberpunk situation, right? And even then, that was its own thing. The Sony first-party games, they are worked on and workshopped and designed to the nth degree to...
And funded.
Pardon?
And funded.
And funded. And commercialized and in many, many ways, to the point that they kind of can't release in a state that makes them a bad game because they're designed to appeal to the most amount of people. And they do a wonderful job at it. They do a really great job at making sure that everybody who plays the game is going to have a, like, capital G good time.
Totally. Like, with the original God of War, rather, before playing the 2018 God of War, I would have never thought that Sam would actively want to watch me play for the story of the God of War games. And I wouldn't have even bothered.
Yeah, totally.
With the previous entries. But they've,
that's
an example of how it works.
Yeah, totally, and that's not a bad thing. But it is a thing I think that I am starting to take into consideration a lot more when I'm playing a lot of these big games. Is that they are the, like we've spoken in the past for a long time that Sony has started to pivot to trying to emulate the Marvel strategy. Them trying to be this big home studio that produces capital P products. That sit in consistently good, sit in the high eights as an average. I think is pretty fair. Their tentpole ones,
higher.
And their tentpole ones fit higher. And they do a lot of similar tactics with running their social media accounts and building up hype and like their whole no spoiler campaign, which while I dramatically disagree with it, is very effective. Is the same thing that Marvel does, which my personal opinion is I think that is a really good way of also removing critique from your product. But that's not quite this discussion. I think this game's pacing, is fucked. I think this game's pacing is completely off. I think it is too designed almost. It is. I can see the walls of this game so clearly, and I can see and I can see the train tracks. I know exactly what's going to happen next. I understand what the next chapter is before I've even finished the chapter that I'm currently in.
As in, like, you get the vibe of what the start of that segment is, and you understand where it's leading you, kind of a deal.
More than that, I know what the one after it is. I'm seeing the, like, well, when you hop on a train and you look at the map of the city and you look at all the stations, like this is that game for me. I can see exactly what's going to come next, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I don't think that the pacing has been settled correctly. I think it is too fast in some sections. It is too slow in some sections, and it's got these weird interstitial bits that I think don't do it any favors.
Okay. Yep.
I think a lot of the interstitial bits are actually kind of letting the game down quite a lot. I don't think they're needed, and I think there are definitely too many of them. Because I've done like 4 of these weird they're for light spoilers.
This is officially your time to turn around and get out if you don't want the spoilers. We're going into the first few hours now.
Kratos and Atreus and the whole gang packs their bags. It's no longer safe at home, and they move in with the dwarves, Sindri and Brock, in their realm between realms little treehouse. Which is a cool little location that hub as your hub. It is your brief and debrief area. It is where you do your upgrades for the most part. You bump into them along the way, but for the most part you're there. It is the calm after the big battle. But these moments I think bring the game down a bit for me. They take.
So you don't like it when they go to the treehouse and they debrief?
It's not that. It's just these moments, they don't fit in this puzzle well for me. They feel too normal. they feel too domestic, I think, is actually where they are for me. Like they don't fit, like they don't serve the narrative and keep the stakes at the same level and work for the story enough for me, I think. And it has caused the pacing, which the pacing for the first game was very quick, right? Like the first game is a very fast game. You are moving constantly in this game. Like you slow down, but that game feels like a marathon where you're consistently moving from path to path. It reminds...
you've got the one goal. It's to spread the ashes from the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
And that's what the start of the game is, and that's what the end of the game is.
Yeah.
And there's a million things in between.
Yeah, whereas the goal keeps shifting a lot in this game. And that's because the characters are trying to figure out what they're trying to do. They're all trying to figure out where their own intentions lie. You know, Atreus has got this grand quest that he's trying to go on, and Kratos is trying to get him to sort of calm down. And you meet Tyr and all this stuff, right? Like, you know, everybody's got their own interest, but this weird interstitial bit, which is them working out what happens next, just it just fucks the pacing up for me.
Oh man, I do not really agree. I really like those moments, and a big critique I had of the original game is we have to get to the top of the mountain. Oh, there's a fog in the way, so we have to go get a special lamp. And all right, we finally made it back to the mountain, and we can get through. Oh, it's the wrong mountain. We finally made it to the mountain. There's a new portal. Oh no, the portal's broken.
Yeah,
oh no, we finally made it to the tower. Oh no, I need Mimir's other eye.
That was a critique. That was a critique that you and I think everybody had with the first game as well. Like I think that's still fair in the first one, but I think that this game doesn't replace that with anything better. I think the MacGuffin changing in the first one, for over and over and over again, was an issue, but I don't think that this weird, messy, where's the story kind of going? I understand they're unraveling the mystery at the same time, and I understand that, and I think that part of it is interesting, but they're kind of half in, half out a lot of the time. And I also think the interstitial bits, I don't think they're written very well. They're kind of a bit quirky. They're a bit sitcom, weird. And, you know, I don't mean, this is kind of a meaner way to put it, but it's quirky Marvel joke. Right? It's the God of War is a really good cook. And, you know, this Brock guy, and, you know, he says fuck a lot. And Sindri, you know, I'm going to go make a new table, you know, shuffle off. They're kind of not always, they're kind of, they're doing these beats as if they're alone, or they're doing these beats as if they're not as if they're the only one in the room. And no one acknowledges them, because that's how you do that joke. But I don't think that joke works in this setting.
Okay. I personally preferred those moments to have that downtime with those characters and to just get more of those moments together.
They are building moments. They definitely are building character moments more so than the first game is. There are also more characters in this game. But there is, in terms of, the cast has just got, there's just more. But there are characters you meet, that where I'm up to, there's a new character that I've met, which is good, because it's oh my God, finally, another woman. But I don't feel like they're utilizing that space well enough. I would prefer it if they weren't so quirky, jokey, and were a little bit more sincere with each other. And I know those moments are there, but those moments are the non-directed optional moments. And I think that some of that is the better writing here, and they're not putting that front and center. And so I'm missing it at times.
Fair. There's definitely a lot that's going on in that first chunk, in that first third where you've been, where it does feel a bit directionless, I feel.
Yeah.
You know, you do Midgard, and you learn that Atreus has been going to the Jotnar shrines, and he can find these secret rooms with extra parts of Grower's prophecies, and then your house gets blown up, and you go to Svartalfheim to find Tyr, and then you find him. And then you get home and he's like, oh, Tyr's actually like really fucked up because he's been imprisoned for millennia or something. And then like Atreus is like, oh, because of that, I don't know what to do now. And I will immediately go and do something else reckless instead. And then he comes back and they're like, oh, we should follow through on this line of questioning. And Atreus is like, oh, okay, great. And then they come back from that and they're like, I don't know what to do next. And then something else spontaneous happens with Atreus. I like that lack of
noisy.
direction is I feel like more the culprit in terms of what makes these sections feel messier. Is because they're always they don't know, they like you said, they don't know what they're doing, but it feels a bit like at some point I find myself asking at some point, yeah, what are we doing? What are we up to here, guys?
And I think it's the same problem that I'm trying to describe with its pacing issues, is that like because we're not clear on what we're doing, the speed at which things are happening are not quite making as much sense. Only because I'm not sure at what speed, like what gear are we in right now? Like, are we in like are we sitting around parked talking, or are we in top gear, like fucking rushing towards the next thing? It is not leaving me lost, but it is leaving me like just a bit uneasy about a lot of it.
I would say that this game only once is ever in top gear, and it's at the very end. And right. I would say at all other times before then, it is somewhere in between.
Yeah, and I think I'm not going to enjoy that as much. I think
you want a bit more directed focus, do you?
I mean, always, but I want a bit more. Like, yeah, I want more direction. There's another thing that I need to talk about, which is related to this, which I think you're gonna hate. It is part of an ongoing conversation. I was talking about this at work today. It is part of an ongoing gripe that I have. So, a lot of the shows on Disney Plus use a thing called a volume.
Oh fuck! Where are we going with this? Oh my god!
A lot of the shows on Disney Plus use a thing called a volume, which is a big set that has got big screens on ends, and they have high-powered computers that run Unreal Engine in real time, which is a basically digital representation of a CGI set that actors can see and act off. And I think it makes for terrible television, like awful acting and horrible sense of space. I think it fundamentally makes shows look worse when used improperly, which a lot of the Disney Plus shows I think are. I think when it is used properly, there are instances where the volume can be very, very useful, but I think they've been overusing it to the point that every show has started to look the same and started to look very, very fake.
Yeah, it's kind of like the early green screen issue, right? Where it's like, oh, they're using green screen now because they can and it's more powerful and all of this. Whereas like the volume is more powerful in different ways and good for other things.
Yeah.
But it isn't something that should be used in all circumstances.
Yeah, great for lighting reference, for example, but not for like, hey, a city, right?
Yeah, it's good for some rooms and some settings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm having the same issue with this game, where I am noticing a lot of the cutscenes with a lot of characters, they are walking in what feels like a 10 by 20 meter soundstage.
Uh-huh.
And they are acting in a 10 by 20 meter soundstage because like a lot of the pre-release informational videos they show is like deep dive into Chris Judge's acting, for example, and we get to see him acting in the soundstage with the mocap suit, with the mocap dots over his face, with the camera sticking above his head, showing him doing his performance stuff, and I think all that stuff is great, except I think in this game they have gone the route, which makes sense, that they have gone the route of designing in-game spaces to fit the size of the stage that they have to work on. And so that they can walk around one-to-one for the entire setting and then use that footage almost verbatim as they walk around these 10 by 20 meter sections inside the game, and it's replicated directly by the footage that they've had. And I think that makes sense, except I feel like in a lot of the cutscenes, I've been noticing that there are these 10 by 20... this 10 by 20 is just me using arbitrary numbers, by the way, but like, you know, like a room... they've been using the same room over and over again.
They can only walk so far once a cutscene starts.
Yes, and everybody seems to have the same rules apply to them. And then when a moment like spoilers for early fight, which we know, there's a fight between Thor and Kratos. There is a moment where they have this big confrontation in a 10 by 20 meter set, and then they get thrown kilometers and kilometers and kilometers, and then they enter once again back in another 10 by 20 meter set, and they have this like there's a gameplay fight, but then there's this moment where they're walking while they're in like middle of a fight, and then there's other sections where there's a moment where the snake comes back, right? And there's this one
cool scene.
Yeah, cool scene. There's this one little bit where Atreus and Sindri are acting off of each other as the snake is coming off, and Atreus shoves Sindri out of the way for a rock that's coming down. And it felt like once again they were in the same space that they've always been in, and the cutscenes are they're not even bad, but I'm looking at the walls.
You're seeing the structure. You're seeing the artifice.
And I understand that it's like that this game is sort of meant to be, you know, it's sort of meant to be like a play in that regard. That's how they filmed a lot of the cutscenes, and I can appreciate that.
And it's also adhering to that one-shot rule as
totally.
well. They can't cut.
They
can't hide stuff in that same way.
They're replicating theater in that regard, right? Where like it's there's no cuts. It is done on a take, and you are being brought into the scene. But these scenes, to me, all feel the same size.
Jeremy.
Kerry.
I challenge you to play any AAA game from the last 6 years and not feel the same.
So, and
it's all done this way. Uncharted,
no.
Like the last God of War, they all do this.
No, here's the difference, right? Is that. So I was thinking about this, right? I was thinking like why am I only noticing this now? Why am I not noticing this beforehand, right? And I was thinking back to Uncharted. Like, short of the scenes where they are just like sitting and talking on the hood of the car, right? When they've got these moments, right? Uncharted does a great job at throwing you from a train to a truck to a boulder to a crane onto a boat. They do all these acting on this same scale, right? It's similar types of studios. Like, I'm not sure if Sony Santa Monica has their own dedicated studio, or they share the same one with Naughty Dog.
They have dedicated mocap space in their studio.
Okay, cool. They move their characters around different spaces a lot more than they do in this game. This game has felt very self-contained in their cutscenes. There is.
You need more Aaron Sorkin walk and talks.
I mean, I know there's one in this game with Toby. From what I saw on Twitter.
Don't call him that.
It's
Jesus.
Toby.
It's not Toby.
It's Toby. It's
no,
the voice.
It's not.
It's the voice.
It's different.
He was Toby in West Wing. He's Toby in Man of Steel. He's Toby.
No, he was Richard Schiff in all of those. He's the same actor. That's why it's the same voice.
Toby. It's I feel like they have two types of shots in this game. There are three ways of delivering dialogue. There is rooms, on a soundstage. There is like just walking, traversal gameplay, standard gameplay, and then there are those weird, like, sit down in a boat. Let's talk there.
Like open world. Let's fill the space.
Yeah. And also, by the way, why is Atreus' face just never animating?
What do you mean? Like,
as in his mouth moves, but he doesn't emote at all, apart from when he's in.
You mean like in gameplay scenes?
In those open world, like, let's fill the space things. He is just like a puppet.
I don't think nearly any of them animate that well in that scenario, and that's not new. That's kind of the same in Uncharted. They don't really emote that much when they're in gameplay. Yeah, but they're not facing the camera the entire time. And they're like, I think I need a little bit more from Atreus in this. I like from his actual facial animations, because he's having, you leading up to finding Tia,
Kratos and Atreus are having some pretty heavy conversations a lot of the time. Like, Kratos is really grilling him and trying to make sure that what Atreus is doing,
bring down his expectations a bit.
Yeah, bring it down, but also I think fortify him and strengthen his determination for what he wants from him, right? Really make sure that Atreus knows precisely what he needs from this moment right now. Which I'm really enjoying. I'm enjoying Kratos in this game way more than I was in the first game.
I would love to talk about their character dynamics soon.
Yeah. This is the last point I've got on for the most part my complaints. But it's because he's talking to Kratos the entire time, and because Kratos has got the back to the camera and Atreus is pointing front, I need him to have a bit more. I need him to droop his eyes. I need him to change his posture. But he's like a Muppet. And it's
that's a good point. That they don't have any of that physicality in game in just the world. It is, you will get basic phoneme mouth movement, which is auto-generated, and that's it.
And I think for a game of this scale, for a conversation of this weight, and for moments of genuine gravitas, I think they need I need more than that.
Yeah. It's interesting because you'd get that from a Naughty Dog game, but a Naughty Dog game is shorter, and so it can be more detailed and more focused.
And that's the thing, right? There was so much of that. I don't need it in all of it, right? When Mimir is telling a tale of the Nordic gods of old, I don't need everyone to go yeah, that's interesting. But when they're having, when Kratos says do my words annoy you or something, and that's oh fuck, I need him to show a little bit of emotion. It's making me it's making me roll my eyes at Atreus quite a lot.
Okay.
And part of that is also due to the fact that the rest of the game, there's quite a lot of animation and they're all very, very directed. When it's there, when it's not there, it's very noticeable.
Yeah, it's interesting. Something that kind of blew my mind after the game came out was that, I don't know if this had been announced prior, but this game was developed as a PS4 game first.
You can see it.
Before a PS5 game. They had PS5 kits pretty early in development, but this game runs actually apparently really, really solidly on PS4. It's a 2022 game, and it runs really, really well on PS4, apparently.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. If they're going to do it, they need to do it right, and they have done so.
Totally.
But it means that what we're getting basically is a PS5 version of a PS4 game.
Yeah, like a PS4.5.
Yeah, and so that's why we still have crawl space sections, which this game and the last one are great at filling with unique dialogue sections. There's this bit where Atreus swears because they're going through some big thing, and then they do some combat for 5 minutes, and then they go through one of these crawl spaces, a loading zone, and Kratos has this discussion. Mimir says, quite the mouth you had on there, laddie. And he's like, I was so scared we were flying through the air. And Kratos is like,
you want that? You want those to be your last words?
Is that what you really want your last word to be?
Yeah.
And Atreus is like, no.
Yeah.
and they disguise it really well. They work within it, and it's much better than in the older game as well. There are far less of them, and they are shorter.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the return of the giant circle tree that you walk through until a door appears.
Right.
I'd much rather A to B. That is the correct amount of time to load it, but it's not a huge complaint. I just don't like that area that much.
Yeah, no, it's a loading zone. It's a circle that you run around in.
Yeah. Or stand still.
Yeah, I always used it. I didn't do it so much in this game, but in the first game, I always used it for axe throwing. I always liked finding a really far away point and seeing how far above I had to aim it and then shoot a thing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about these characters. So you're talking about this dynamic between Atreus and Kratos and the questions that Kratos is asking to sort of get that to make sure Atreus knows what he's wanting, right? He's trying to find the old god of war. Does he want war? And Atreus is like, no, I don't want that. I just want to find out about my prophecy and this. And Kratos is seeing through his vagueness, because Atreus probably doesn't even know that much, but he wants that purpose, and he wants to find out why the giants knew him and what he's supposed to do.
Yeah, he's got a prophecy, and he's got a bunch of people that he wants to meet, and he's got connections to his heritage and all this stuff.
Yeah. And it's fascinating to see Kratos understand compassionately, but also try and steer him and guide him and protect him while they go on this path, to be like, all right, we'll investigate this. This is clearly important to you. Let's go through this. But like, we're not going to do this forever. We're not going to do this for the wrong reasons. And if this goes sideways, we're not going to keep going. He's being a good father. Like, in the at least the best father that he has ever been able to be. And I think my favorite part from the first even 2 hours of this game is that you get to see Kratos, Atreus, and Mimir as a functional family. And it feels like the best reward for all of 2018 God of War, where it isn't functional, and there's a bit of reconciliation, but it's still a bit awkward. He still calls him boy, and still calls him head, and they're friendlier and they're happier with each other, but there's still, they're only at the start of that sort of new beginning for their relationship, and this is 2-3 years later, and they are that more comfortable with each other. And Kratos will confide in Mimir and be like, "What do you think of what the boy is saying?" And he'll call Mimir brother. And not just because Mimir calls him brother, but because he thinks of him that fondly, because they are that close.
Yeah, there's a fun level of like, he's my peer, but he's also he's a confidant and someone that he will show his own level of affection to. Yeah, I think it is interesting. I understand where you're coming from by saying that it does feel like a reward for the entire journey of 2018. And I think that I've got a weird, like, because I didn't like you can go back and listen to those old episodes, but like I didn't at all enjoy the ending of 2018. To the point where I think that like a lot of Kratos's intentions and actions did not justify or line up with what the game was saying. And I think that this game largely, like, it carries those forward in a way that I think sits better than the ending of 2018 ever did. I think there is a broad strokes brush of like even if you disagreed with him wholeheartedly like I did, or rather the game's read of Kratos like I did, it doesn't really matter. They sort of set them up to be in a situation where like you can sort of just follow where they're both settled at now, because there's been a bit of off-screen character development,
but not too much. Just
like enough that you understand where they're at. Like, you don't necessarily need the first time Kratos calls Mimir brother, but you can understand that would have happened at some point, and it probably would have been a little bit of a moment, even if no one spoke about it. Rather, I think maybe it's weird that I'm finding the most annoying thing in this game is Atreus. And I'm trying to reconcile, is it because he's an annoying kid, or is it because his intentions are not actually being told correctly? And I think it's a little bit of both. I think, he's an awkward teenager. All awkward teenagers are. He is season 4 of Stranger Things Atreus at this point. He is awkwardly grown up. Brock and Sindri both comment on it like, "Hey, you look fucking weird, don't you?" Which was very funny.
He's too tall!
Yeah. Like Brock, I think, saying like, "What is that?" Like, and Kratos is like, "That's my son."
And Mimir's like, he's just growing up, you daft prat. Didn't you ever have an awkward phase when you grew up? And Atreus is like, "Hey."
Yeah. I'm enjoying all of that. But yeah, I think and so I'm trying to reconcile, is it because I'm finding Atreus an annoying kid, or am I finding the character actually not being told in a way that I'm not finding annoying? I'm trying to work that out.
And it's interesting, right? I watched a video after finishing the game, and it was a video essay on the original. It was an actually incredible video essay. It was like a feature film quality video editing and graphics, and it was amazing. But it was this dissection of
how the 2018 God of War game twisted Norse mythology to make their own story. And it was about how to do that. They removed Loki from all of the mythology that was part of the world to begin with, because Loki didn't exist in the Norse realms up until, so far as we knew, the end of 2018, when we learned that Atreus's name that his mother was going to name him was Loki. He is Loki.
Yeah.
And so, you know, Loki isn't Thor's brother because Thor has been around for decades, and Atreus wasn't...
yeah.
Like, Atreus wasn't born to him and all of that. And so this game is sort of reinserting him into the mythology in interesting ways, coming into Ragnarok. And I feel that he makes choices and he has these motivations that I see, and I'm like, I feel like he's only doing this because he's meant to stir shit up. I feel like there's not actually that much logic to it, but because he's meant to, he does.
Yeah, like he's an agent of chaos. Like that.
Yeah,
is...
but like I feel like he's doing things that he doesn't even know why he's doing them. He just does.
Yes.
And like, look, maybe a teenage god, son of another god in a world full of gods and in the middle of a conflict between gods would do that. But it feels a bit like, why have you done this?
Yeah, and I know what you mean, right? Because like, while he was more of a child in 2018, you could understand basically every decision he was making. You know, his realization of, oh my God, I can do whatever I want, and then him going through, you know, the like, you know, let's just like love me, that father.
Really bratty phase.
Yeah, right. Like all of that stuff, you can see all of that, and it felt correct and natural for this character. Where, like, I don't really know what this character is at the moment.
And, you know, maybe he doesn't know either. Maybe that's intentional, but it feels like no one knows what he is.
He kind of knows. I think I just want him to verbalize his conflict a bit more. And we saw a little bit of that. There's a moment where you play as him. By the way, my reaction to, we play as Atreus was the biggest, fuck.
Why?
Because I don't think it was fun.
No, but like, was that your reaction as soon as you took control of the sticks, or?
Yeah, because I'm like, oh no, they've made another character to play as, and I don't trust like that. And then I played it, I'm like, this doesn't feel good as Kratos.
No, it's not as good as Kratos. It's fine.
I don't enjoy it. Like I'm playing these sections being like, hope this ends soon. I don't really particularly enjoy being an archer in this game that has really incredible, like, you know, and like melee combat. That's
an indestructible bow.
Yeah, right. Like this, like it's just worse Kratos.
Kratos.
Yes. Yeah. He's got a little bit of like him going through his own thoughts in some of those sections.
Yeah.
But not enough that I know what he's thinking. And like he's winging it for a lot of it, but why?
Yeah, totally. I was expecting a moment like that, but I was expecting more of a like The Last of Us switch, you know, like 2/3 through the game, maybe Kratos is like dead or he's injured or something, and Atreus has to go out on his own to do something. I was expecting a switch like that.
Yeah, not just like a hilarious like, where were you, like peeing? And it was like everyone's like ha 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 ha. And like,
it sounds to me like you didn't actually mind that. You don't mind the treehouse interstitials. You mind that one scene, because all of the things you've done so far, all of the examples you've done of that being awkward is only from that scene. Like the Sindri getting up to build a table and Tyr can cook and he says I'm peeing and all of that. That's all from just the one scene.
No, the build a bigger table thing.
It's the one scene, I promise you.
It's not, but it
is, buddy. I watched it yesterday. I was watching someone streaming it. It is that scene when he comes back from Midgard.
No, because that's when the table is built. Is when he comes back from Midgard. Because he builds he builds a bigger table before Tyr starts to cook.
Jeremy, do you want to do a pizza bet?
No.
Because I'm right?
No, I don't want to do that.
Okay. What would you like to bet? Because I'm down to get some free stuff right now.
What I'm saying is that
yes,
I don't like those scenes.
Sure. Okay. No worries.
That's
fine.
Yeah. It's look, and I think like just like I'm worried about time a little bit. The presentation, I think we've sort of spoken about for the most part, right? Like how the story is told. Unless you have specifics you want to bring up.
I do want to say it's gorgeous. Like it's a game that visually I have no issues with. And at moments I am stunned by.
I'm kind of not.
Okay.
Like I mean, like I'm not. It looks good. Like it.
Yeah.
Obviously, it looks good. It looks like a. I think there's no wow moment for me.
Definitely. There's no playing Uncharted 4 for the first time. I can't believe that this is happening on this console moment. Definitely.
And I think because of the like it also is a PS4 game. Like you can see some of that limitation.
I don't think it detracts though.
No, like it looks good. It definitely doesn't look bad in any spot. But it doesn't look like the PS5 God of War that I was actually hoping it was going to be.
Totally.
But not in a way that I'm like, this is bad. It's just like, oh,
totally.
Okay. It's just not that.
Definitely. It is nailed the bar. It has hit the bit where it's supposed to be, and that's good.
It looks good, and it is not going to be the Final Fantasy VII Remake 2 that is only next gen.
Totally. Or Final Fantasy 16.
Yeah. 16 might be on old platforms.
I don't think so.
Okay.
But yeah, also the audio, the music, it is spectacular. It's the kind of thing, it will be quite... It doesn't always stick to the front of my brain. It doesn't always jump to the front as like, this is something that I'm really paying attention to. But when I notice it, anytime I notice it, it's fantastic. I really, really think the soundtrack is quite fantastic.
I haven't heard it, but I think because I'm in a new place, I don't think I've set up my speakers correctly. So I just haven't heard that mix much.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about Odin?
Toby.
Odin? Do you want to talk about him at all?
I don't have a lot to say. Like he's fine. He's fine.
I really like that first scene with Thor and Odin.
Yeah, it's cool.
I like it because it's Richard Schiff. It's definitely Richard Schiff. And there's a moment where he doesn't talk with the same mythical kind of energy that the others do. Like he's just kind of that American guy that he is. But I really like it because it makes him come across as this like detached, almost like he's got this world under his control. Like he's almost like a corporate boss of the Norse realms. And like it feels kind of weird, but they own it. Yeah, he is. And because they own it, it resonates throughout the whole thing. When you get to see him more, it starts to work.
Yeah, he's like a mob boss. Is how I've seen him.
Where he's like, because he sits down and he's like, now Thor's boys, self-defense. He's like, you think he's gonna muscle you, and he's like, I'm willing to strike a deal, and you can keep the prisoner that I know you stole. And he's like, he's trying to be friendly, but he's clearly annoyed, and he's clearly threatening you. But he's it's all under the artifice of being friendly. He's like, I didn't do a thing. Like he's such a bastard.
It's weird. I don't like. I think he's doing a great job. I also don't know if he fits. I don't love his cadence, and I don't love a lot of the language that he's using. Only because the gods that we've seen in 2018 were a little bit more Shakespearean, right? Like the way Baldur spoke was. Like, Baldur was great. Like, what a fucking awesome antagonist. Because
very mysterious.
But you fucking hated him. Like, you hated him with every ounce that you possibly could because he was a prick. He was cocky. He was arrogant. But the way
and Thor's sons, too, Magni and Modi,
they were a bit, like, larger than life.
Yeah, they were bastards.
Yes. Yeah, they were right fuckers. Whereas... Richard Schiff doing Richard Schiff, talking about and I understand that you had dealings with my ex. Like that's That's a weird.
It does strike weird, doesn't it? It's
It
like,
does.
oh.
Yeah, and like, I kind of Odin being as big as he is, to me, doesn't work in a way of like being like. No. Sorry, as in Odin's personality, Odin's importance.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Odin's like level of hierarchy. He wouldn't need to not say Freya's name because to him it doesn't matter, right? But like him saying my ex is like it's like a sour spot.
Yeah. So you only really see him for like 3 minutes at the start.
Yeah.
And then you see more of him later.
Sure.
I think his characterization that you see at the start is true to what you see of him later, and how much you see of him and what you see of him later does fit and does work within the world. It is just a bit jarring when you meet him for the first time. It's like, oh, this guy's fucking weird.
Yeah, but like even Thor is a little bit more in line, I think, with the rest a little bit. You know, him talking about blood debts and him using terms of phrase that people don't use. You know, people don't say blood debt, right? You know, people say payback, people say revenge, people say like you know, we're even. You know, Odin wouldn't say blood debt in this characterization. He would say like, you know, I don't know. He would say something along the lines of, like getting even, like you're like, you know, you owe me. I'm here to collect.
Yeah. Pay up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have any other points that you wanted to touch on?
Not necessarily. Yeah, I think I'm overall enjoying it more. But I am seeing edges in ways that I'm enjoying less, I think. It's a weird game. I think it is messy. I am finding it less clean than the first. And part of that might also be like the first one was an interesting style of story that we hadn't quite seen to that scale at the very least.
And we didn't know how they were going to remake this franchise yet.
Yeah.
We didn't know what this was really going to be. I remember, if you remember, the part of the reason, I mean, I was poor at the time, but part of the reason why I didn't play it to start with is because I was just skeptical. I was like, I don't see why I should want to play this.
Yeah. Like it reminds me, like, this is like a and this is going to be more negative to you than it is for me, but this is such an Age of Ultron game to me.
I've warmed on Age of Ultron over the years.
Oh, okay, right, yeah. Like I think Age of Ultron is. I think there's a good movie in there, and I think it's messy and structurally a bit balked and
trying to do too much.
Maybe one too many characters, not enough time. And weird moments that are kind of just like what is really happening here?
Why is that here?
Yeah, and I'm feeling a lot of the same things. And similarly, it's like Age of Ultron, like it's like, oh, it's more of a known quantity. We don't have to do as much setup. Some characterization happened off screen. Here's some things. You sort of brought into the middle of the beginning of the story as opposed to the very beginning. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be very interesting to see how you feel when you get through the other side. One last thing I'll say is you're like, oh, you know, I don't know how much I'll go to the side content. I think some of the side content is, I have enjoyed the writing as a whole in this game. I've enjoyed these characters, and I enjoy kind of every moment I get to spend with them and see their dynamic and see how they discuss things with each other. Like Atreus, one moment you have in the boat when you're in, or anywhere in one of the open sections, there's a moment where he starts talking about how he thinks his beard's coming in. And Kratos and Mimir start to very quietly
poke at him.
Yeah, Atreus is like, what he says, I think my beard's coming in, and there's like a silence, and Kratos says, "Is it?" I won't spoil the rest for you.
Yeah.
But like any shit like that, I love. I'm totally there for. So my point being, the side content, I think all of them have unique stories alongside them and great moments that bring you through and tell the story to you as you go through the quest and then come to a nice culmination by the end. There's not really been a dud side quest for me that I haven't been glad I spent the time on.
So even if you do just mainline the main path or only do one or two here and there, I definitely think you should have it in your head to go back to them at some point. Because from what I've played, I haven't done all of them. I haven't even done half of them. But from the ones that I've played, have been excellent.
Are you enjoying the puzzles in this game?
There were some in Alfheim with the rebounding axe, which was like cool, but then some of it needed to be a bit too precise or like not precise enough, and that felt a bit wonky, or I didn't know where to look. And there's the problem that everyone talks about, how your companion is far too fast to tell you the answer to the thing. But then when you do get stuck, they have nothing to say.
We need to talk about that a little bit. Like the fucking the absolute sheer amount of dialogue that is just, here's the solution to the puzzle. Like that is almost fucking instant. Like I'm sitting here like doing the puzzle. So
instant.
I'm doing it. Like I'm in the middle of it and they're telling me like motherfucker, like I know. Like I'm doing this right now. Shut the fuck up, actually. It is infuriating me. I haven't
heard anyone not complain about it.
Like I'm not super loving the puzzles. Like I think they're fine, but a lot of them sort of like a lot of them I think take too long for the solution that isn't that difficult. It's just like many steps, and because you sort of got to like lumber around a little bit and jump across and then climb up. I'm like I know it. Like just bring this a little bit shorter so I don't have to walk as much.
I still like the Narnia chests, like the 3-rune combo chests.
Like, those are good. Also, the abundance of chests in this game, I feel like I'm tripping over them every fucking 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's pretty true to the 2018 experience.
I want to say they were far more spread out, or at least a bit more, less on the main path maybe is the issue, because you're just bumping into them when you're not even in any hidden areas. Like, hey, there's a big chest, and there's the one over here that's on fire, and there's one on here that's an Narnia, and there's one on here that's like there's so fucking many of them, and it's making me care less and less about what's actually inside them. I'm like, well, there's another one.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Caring less about what's inside them, and you just open it because it's there. But yeah, I always felt like there were heaps.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, the gameplay is not worse. I think it is better in a lot of very subtle ways that are hard to put your finger on. But overall,
it feels.
The game is.
Yeah.
For me, the game has met the expectations that it set in 2018.
I feel like the blocking is a little bit off for me, maybe.
Yeah, I felt a bit strange because they take away your original shield and you have to choose a couple of other ones. Which one did you choose?
The parry shield, of course.
Yeah, me too. And honestly, I tried, because you have those two and then you get the original shield back at some point. There are like 2 or 3 others. I stayed with the Dauntless shield, the parry shield, the whole time. It's the best one, I felt like. Have you... Okay, so you know how in Alfheim they tell you to shield bash enemies with a blue circle around them to interrupt them?
Yeah.
Do you know to do that after a parry and you'll get a super strong shield bash? Because they don't tell you that for like 10 hours.
I didn't know that.
So do that and you'll feel better about the shield.
Okay.
When it's glowing yellow or red, it will do way more stun when you shield bash.
Okay. Like, what I didn't like was this weird, like, the slow-mo as if I've got a parry, except I missed it, and then a slow-mo attack just continues to hit me.
Yeah,
I've had that.
If your shield gets if your stance gets broken.
Yeah, but why the fuck is it in slow-mo? It takes forever, and I feel like it's like a bug. Like I feel like it's it's triggering effect of what a parry should have been, but what it's doing is like I've been parried, and therefore the enemy gets to do the cool slow-mo fucking attack on me while I'm stunned. And I'm sitting here being like, fucking let me control, bring it back to normal speed. It's happening a lot because I'm
pretty sure. That just means you need to parry better, Jeremy.
I mean, yeah.
That means it's your fault.
It has made me parry better.
I'm pretty sure it was like that in the first one too. I think that's intentional.
Okay.
Well, we'll leave it there. We've got more to talk about once Jeremy's played more of it and we talk more about the rest of the game. But until